Welcome back, everyone, to Virtual Food Safety Office Hours. I'm Abby Snyder. I'm an associate professor at Cornell University. I'm glad to be back in the moderator role today. This is a topic near and dear to my heart, which is sanitation, but also professional development. And so I am joined by an illustrious panel today of expert sanitarians. I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves too. But I'm going to start with some fun facts about each to sort of set the right tone for this conversation. So, first up, besides being the Associate Director of Sanitation and Post-Consumer Brands, Neil is the 2024 IFP Sanitarian of the Year. And I believe he was also a chef at one point. Maybe he still is. Maybe it's like once a chef, always a chef. Neil can weigh in on that when he does his intro. Next, we have the Global Director of Sanitation at Kerry, and Nathan is the 2025 IFP Sanitarian of the Year. As a fun fact, he is the word I'm going to use is an aggressive Facebook marketplace user. He has strategy, he has gamesmanship. You can ask him about it sometime if you cross paths, but not today. That's going to be outside the scope of the webinar. And then we have Aneta, who's definitely a future IFP Sanitarian of the Year. And in truth, I have known Aneta for a short amount of time than I have the first two. So I actually asked AI to help me find a fun fact for her, and it told me that Aneta is a black belt, but I think that might be a Six Sigma thing. So Aneta, can you confirm what kind of black belt are you?
Okay, so since you went towards this subject, I do have actually two black belts.
Oh, okay,
I
great.
have one in Global Six Sigma, integrated Six Sigma, but I also have a black belt in martial arts.
Okay, well, then that is
Impressive.
not the answer I was expecting, but that's a good fun fact. I'm going to pocket that one for the future.
Yeah.
So great. So I work with these folks on a dry sanitation advisory council. They're part of a core group who advise our research and make sure it's aligned with what is practical and valuable for the industry. And today they've agreed to talk about their careers as corporate sanitarians in the food industry. So we've had a number of pre-submitted questions, but you are also welcome to submit questions via chat just live during the session. So you can either DM them to me privately if you want to be anonymous, or you can just post them to the main channel and I'll sort of facilitate the Q&A. Actually, Alex, could you progress to the next slide? So if you find yourself interested in pursuing this topic further, I do want to make you aware of an event hosted at Kerry's North American headquarters that's outside Chicago. So thanks, Nathan and Kerry, for hosting. But this is a forum on advancing dry sanitation. So it's not a workshop. It's not the sort of basics that you might get in a workshop. But this is an advanced forum for the industry to build consensus on hot button issues and to identify what needs to be done to move the needle on those topics. So things like sanitation, dry sanitation for allergen changeovers or validation of dry sanitation. We have a number of great presenters and organizers, including these folks. So you can learn more either through this QR code. We'll drop the link in the chat. You can also feel free to email me with questions. But to start off with, I'm going to ask each of you to tell us a bit about your career trajectories. How did you get where you are? And so maybe Neil, would you like to kick us off with that?
I was hoping Nathan would be first. No. Oh man. So how did I get where I'm at? Interestingly enough, my father's a food scientist. I went to school for food science, and my wife's a food scientist. And so my mother at the dinner table just sits there and listens. But I actually started going in food manufacturing plants since I was 4 years old. So first one was a soda bottling facility back when they still had glass bottles. Was my very first plant at 4 years old, and I used to travel around with my father to food manufacturing plants, and he started off in quality and operations, but got into sanitation and fell in love with it for his whole career. And I ended up following his footsteps. So after my culinary years, I diverged into culinary, became a Cordon Bleu certified chef, and owned businesses, built them, sold them, did that for a while, but wanted to do something different. I love microbiology. I remember the years of traveling around the plants with my father and decided to go back to school and go into food science. And then I've done operations, I've done consulting, I've been a supplier support, but I just love sanitation. I'm one of those weird ones. It's just I love that sanitation, and and kind of racking up the rest of my career on just really focusing in on sanitation. To me, QA is a young person's game. I like to let the younger ones deal with all the QFS stuff, and I like to manage the sanitation. So
Either one of you next. Nathan, do you want to go?
Sure, I'll go next. So how did I get into my current role? Well, I think like most, I stumbled into sanitation. I started working in the food industry during college. It was just honestly a job to pay for college. And not even knowing what it was, um, a contact that a family friend had asked me if I was looking for full-time work. And I was like, you know what, it would be great. I'd started dating and needed money for that as well. So he said, I can get you on at the bakery. And what I was expecting was to walk into like this small room with a bunch of people just like in white uniforms making cookies, and walked into a food manufacturing site where they were making, millions of chocolate chip cookies for the grocery chain Safeway, their private label. Did that through college, and then when I graduated, they made me an offer to move, and studied finance through college. Took an offer to move to Arizona to be a financial analyst. So my path was quite unique. Did finance for a few years, but realized I hated sitting at a desk and wearing a tie all day. So we decided to like looked at what my abilities were, decided to go back into operations. Went to operations, decided to get an MBA. Finished my MBA. Somebody said, "Hey, you know what? Would you like to work for Kraft?" And I was like, "You know what? I would love to work for Kraft." They said, "Well, you have to do it in sanitation." So went to Kraft, cheese and dairy world, which was completely different from the bakeries that I'd been in. Um, like Neil said, I fell in love with it. It touches all the sciences. You've got some chemistry, you got some microbiology, you've got some engineering. So fell in love with the fact that you will never become the expert on everything. You at best become the jack of all trades. So was at Kraft for a little while, and then decided to get a master's in food safety to kind of bolster my paper, my resume. And then at a point, um, similarly, I went on to Heinz to lead Heinz North America Sanitation, and then went into consulting. And then just about 2 years ago, joined the dark side again and came back to industry, working for Kerry.
Anita, over to you.
All right. So my path to sanitation is very unique because I started working my working career just like almost everybody else, trying to look for a job, but I ended up in manufacturing of for plastic housing cell phones. So has nothing to do with sanitation, but it has to do with manufacturing. So, that was just my beginning in basically manufacturing. And I thought to myself that the job that I was doing, which was like basic machine operator job, it was the most boring thing I've ever experienced in my life, and I did not want to be part of it. And I saw people walking around collecting samples, measuring and testing. And so I said, well, this looks a lot more interesting. So that's how I got involved with the quality assurance. And while I was going to school, working full time, and then after that, I joined the food packaging company. So it was not really food industry, but it was food packaging industry. And from there, I joined Mondelez, where that was my first real experience working with sanitation. So that's when I really realized that sanitation and keeping the equipment and the facilities clean is really the foundation of any food safety program in a facility. And that's how the journey began. So from there, I mean, when I was working also in Mondelez, I obtained my not food science degree, but I obtained my MBA. And I just continue working in food safety, sanitation, and quality arena. Um, Spent a little bit time with HelloFresh, and then currently I joined McCormick as a senior manager for for the company over, kind of supporting sanitation and pest control and hygienic design. So it's not really a straight path, but throughout my career, I've also discovered that there's not a lot of I don't know if I want to call it advertised opportunities out there for young people to discover and say, hey, this is exactly what I want to do. So as a side project, I kind of did a little like research and wrote a little article about sanitation, careers in sanitation, because it was kind of interesting to me how one become a sanitarian. So that's a little bit about me.
So the theme is no one was born thinking they were going to be a sanitarian, I guess. Um,
Exactly.
Maybe I'll ask another question just to set the stage, which is like, what do you do? Like, what does a day in the life of a corporate sanitarian actually look like? And we can mix it up this time. I know, Aneta, you just spoke, so maybe Nathan, you can go first on this one.
Yes. So a day in the life. I'd say what's probably a little bit unique about my position is that because I am offered global support, that my days typically start earlier than most days that I would like, or maybe not like, but earlier than normal. As I get older, sleep is um, doesn't come as easily as I would like. So getting up early is now part of the routine. Typically, we'll start calls at latest around 6 a.m. Um, and that's like when I'm in the home office, it's the typical what you'd expect. It's conference calls supporting either troubleshooting or driving improvements and initiatives that I've got going on. Um, and then there's a fair amount of travel, right? So in fact, immediately after this call, I'm going to go get on a plane to go to Mexico. So there's a fair amount of travel with my role that keeps me going. So, and that's typically it's a combination of site support. I like to joke that sometimes it's kind of meet and greet, kiss and baby sort of stuff at some of our sites. And in some cases it's going to support troubleshooting, could be going to do training in different sites, or just getting to know operations. We have so many different locations and we do so many unique processes that honestly, I don't know if there is anybody that would come into a role like that I've got and know all of our processes, because some of them are so very, very unique. So some of my site visits, just kind of understanding what our technology and our processes is.
Is there a routine? Is there a routine day? No. Uh, they, it's almost impossible. What you think you're going to start doing the day. Um, Again, it depends on what level you are in the company. Nathan's got a large support structure underneath of him, so those individuals are going to be taking even a lot more of the brunt before it gets to Nathan. And I have a little bit of that structure below me, but whatever I think I'm going to start the day off with is not what I end the day with. And it's interesting because if you're a person that gets bored doing the same stuff over and over and over again, this job changes so fast and so rapid throughout the day, or even the minute sometimes, that you're never going to be doing the same thing from day to day to day, or even throughout the day. So just like Nathan, sanitation is different because when are we doing sanitation and when there's most support needed? It typically ends up becoming nights. It becomes weekends. And then you have the time differences. And so just like Nathan mentioned, I'd like to get up early in the morning, get going, and then tend to end up working through the night. And there's times where my wife's like, "Go downstairs. You got a couch downstairs. Your phone's bothering me." So, uh, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting career. If you're a squirrel, it's a good one, but you have to make sure that you keep structure to it. So.
Okay, so I'll jump in. So what my day typically look like, I want to echo what both my predecessors have said. No day is the same. What you're planning, what you're going to do in the morning can be completely different what you end up doing during the day. Um, but that is because, like similarly to Nathan, I have a global role, and I am a support function for all three regions within McCormick, which stretches out throughout the entire world, basically. So I might end up having a calls early, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I have the calls very late at night. Um, these calls could be related to an issue that the facilities are facing, or they're trying to resolve, or they're trying to ask for advice, or they want to just get on the call and just talk things out, or sometimes I'm providing training support. And similarly to Nathan, I do travel quite a bit. I spent probably 2 weeks out of my month on the road to various locations. And as I mentioned before the meeting started, currently I'm in Canada, even though my primary location is in Chicago. So I tend to move quite a bit from facility to facility. But actually, that is what makes this interesting, right? Because you get to meet the teams. Kind of build this working rapport with the teams. And there's never a better way to understand the challenges that the facilities are facing than they're actually stepping into their environment and, just experiencing firsthand about the challenges and the things that they need to be working on, or the support that they need, or just somebody just to help them out. Because as we all know, every company is trying to meet budgets, right? And budgets are those difficult things sometimes when the sanitation world is like, we don't offer a lot of ROI, right? We don't have that. We usually have demands, but we cannot offer a lot of ROI. So, but being there on site gives these teams support. So it's a very interesting, challenging, and very unique type of job, and I enjoy every minute of it because I'm not bored, right? There's something going on, something different every single day. No 2 days are alike, no 2 weeks are alike. Even going to the same location, it's completely different every time. So it's a very interesting and challenging job, but at the same time, it provides a lot of rewards. So I would encourage a lot of young people to do that, and I would hope that there are opportunities like internships, sanitation internships focused on actual sanitation that companies can offer, because that's one way for young talent to actually get introduced to this environment.
Yeah, and the travel is quite extensive. It was funny. Me and my wife were sitting around the other day, or at the beginning of the year, looking at my Hilton app to see how many nights I spent on the road the last year, and it was 206 nights in a Hilton alone, not including the Marriotts and everybody else. And I was joking with her. I'm like, I'm gonna, Hilton sells their mattresses, and so I told her I was gonna buy a Hilton mattress next. So that way, I feel like I'm at home when I'm at home. So. So the travel is extensive, quite a bit. So, but that's the fun part too, because like you said, it's getting in there, working with the
Yeah.
people. There's so many good people out there that want to do the right thing, but they need leadership, they need help, and being there right on the floor with them. I mean, I remember starting my career in a dairy plant when I got into food manufacturing, and my first job was in sanitation. And I started off with a bottle brush and a hot bucket of HC10, manually cleaning stuff. So that's where you learn what's happening, is being right there with them during the nights, during the weekends, day in the life of what's their trials and tribulations. That's actually why I wanted to get back into a food manufacturing company, because politics are different right now in food plants. The workforce is different. Understanding things are so different, especially after COVID with the workforce. And I've played a role in food manufacturing plants, operations, quality, sanitation, support, consultant, all that stuff but to really get back in and understand the dynamics of what is their hardships getting back into a food manufacturing company and getting the chance to go out and travel like we do, that is the big payoff because you're right there with them.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna now refer to some pre-submitted questions as again, a reminder to folks, like feel free and empowered to raise your hand or put in chat questions. We prioritize the live stuff. And so part of this is networking too. But we have a few questions, I think, Neil, to some of what you were talking about for people who are in sanitarian roles already. And one of the questions we got was, how do you manage the significant turnover in sanitation?
So, how do you manage that? It's first off, one of my biggest concerns right now in the industry is the pay for sanitation. Um, I don't think we respect in the food industry sanitarians enough in our plants. And the pay scale is indicative of that in a lot of the industry throughout my years of consulting and support and all that for food manufacturing plants. And if we really want to get sanitarians to stay, we got to first look at pay. I mean, which job is harder, running a filler or being a sanitarian, knee deep in scrubbing and doing everything they do? Um, when are we doing our cleaning? One of the things I worked at one of my companies before was, why are we cleaning on weekends when there's no management around, no support? And that's when that's when a lot of maintenance gets done and all that stuff too. So can we not get that brought back to during the week? You're going to have a better chance of getting a more solid group of people. Then you also have plants that clean every single day, every 24-hour turns. Why are you cleaning on third shift when nobody's there managing or help manage? That if you bring it back to first shift, you have a better chance of getting a better pool of people and keeping them. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done, and it's not easy to make those transitions, but I see a lot of companies who are really putting an effort at getting sanitation done at the right time of day or right time of the week. So that way it's a lot easier to get a better pool versus just running a packaging line. That can be done so much easier.
Yeah, so I would add to Neil's comments and just say that it's like when I was in a plant, excuse me, it was typical. It was a night sanitation, wet environment. And I think one of the things that I did that had the biggest impact was we didn't have interviews during the daytime. I would have interviews on Friday night, right as my crew was starting to actually start the sanitation shift. And kind of did two things. First of all, making sure that the interviewee or the applicant knew that it was a night shift position. But what I found was more valuable was I would take them out on the production floor during sanitation so they could clearly see what they were signing up for. Because, it's just like me whenever I started my position in food manufacturing, I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. So I think that's part of it, making sure there's a nice or an appropriate candidate and a clear understanding of what the expectation is or what the position requires and what the working environment is. There's things that we can do to improve that. I mean, similarly, in my career, I've worked in environments that were just intolerable, right? So, from a leadership position, there's things like improving exhaust ventilation and things like that that can make the working conditions better. But honestly, I think the most impactful, besides all that, is making sure that the employees that work in sanitation, and this one doesn't cost any money, but it's just making sure that people feel like they belong and appreciated. And I think everybody has worked for a company, and it's obviously easier at smaller companies, but you can get the same feel at a large company within a site but just making sure that, hey, the leadership expresses to people, hey guys, we understand that cleaning and sanitation isn't glorious. We understand, not like I would say, is you're the redheaded stepchild of the whole business. You're the whipping boy. Um, but I think some of that belonging and then making sure people feel comfortable doing what they're expected to do. So, that comes from training, having somebody to mentor, to shadow them as they're onboarding in particular. But I think those sort of things can make a huge impact. As in my opinion is, as long as you're paying competitively, you don't have to pay even the best within a site. I would love to, but sometimes the reality is that, we're in the business of making product and sanitation doesn't make product. So I get that. There's a hazard pay that should be associated with it, but um, the reality of us being the highest paid individuals on a site is unlikely. To just kind of accept that and then focus in on making sure that people feel welcomed, appreciated, and they're trained really well to do what they're expected.
So though, just to add and kind of echo what my predecessor have spoken already, exactly right on appreciation and recognition of their of their hard work that they do every single day. I think that goes a long way if the management and supervision recognize that hard work that is being done every single day, and and they just don't do that in to those particular individuals themselves, but I recognize it at the larger arena. For example, during the town hall meetings that they have, I think that have done wonders for the environments that I've been, just to recognize them for being for doing all that work, which is the foundation of the good food safety uh, in any environment. And the other thing is to kind of counter a little bit the turnover, maybe having good onboarding training sessions to kind of bridge that gap. So whenever new person starts out, they have a good instructions and kind of pair them with like a buddy system, create a buddy system. So you have somebody to follow and observe to learn the job, to kind of not only have the classroom training, but also the on-the-job skill training. And as they learn the skill, kind of observe what good looks like. So pair them up with somebody that executes the sanitation protocol correctly, and then have them learn from that. And I think that will go a long way to kind of mitigate the fallout when you actually experience the turnover.
So, following on some of this, we had a couple other questions, kind of about how you make yourself or your department be valued or seen by leadership. So, I think the questions about yourself is about sort of personal advancement up the chain as a sanitarian, and then I think the department stuff goes towards like the resource allocation and helping make sure your team feels valued. So, feel free to respond to either or both parts of that. I don't know, Anita, if you want to jump on that first.
So yeah, I think the biggest part of it is a lot of times we do our job, and this is kind of like we are on the autopilot. We jump into kind of put out the fires and provide resources and provide advice or recommendations, and a lot of times we forget to highlight the good things that are being observed in the facilities. I actually feel like a lot of times there are tons of meetings to talk about problems, but there's very little meetings to kind of just to recognize where things are happening related to sanitation and they are executed perfectly, because you're not going to have a 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. meeting on Friday to discuss how sanitation is being executed properly in a facility, but you will have that meeting to talk about problems. So I think changing the mindset a little bit, and maybe creating those meetings and those areas where we can actually recognize when things are going well, might done might gone a long way. And as far as the personal advancement, I guess just learning about the new technologies out there and maybe bringing those technologies into the environment, into your company to kind of leverage that advancement in the industry to make our jobs a little easier.
So looking at job advancement, and I know Nathan, you hit on this a little bit, is our value to our company as our networks, because none of us on this panel here know everything. We can't, because we are literally a jack of all trades, especially in this field, because there's so many things we deal with. We deal with microorganisms, we deal with physics, we deal with engineering, we deal with politics in the business, all these different things that we're dealing with. But our value literally to our organizations is our network. And I can't stress enough to somebody who's wanting to really advance their career beyond getting an MBA and stuff like that, is building that network. I've spent a mass majority of my time, well, not a majority, I'm working, I got to get paid, but I spend as much time as I can building that network of individuals so I can pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm having this issue. Have you dealt with this? Or, we have discussion groups. I could call Nathan, I could call, other people in the industry, belong to an association, like I belong to IEFP. And it's having that network of individuals I can call upon to say, hey, I've got this issue. How have you handled it? And sanitation is not a proprietary thing. We're saving lives. We're producing wholesome product for the consumer base. And if one of us has an issue, it affects everybody. Look at the recalls that have happened out there. And 9 times out of 10, look at what the result was. It was because they didn't follow good sanitary practices. And so by sharing, learning from each other, that's your value to your company. Hence bringing in that new technology, like Aneta mentioned, is I love new technology. That's fun to me. And so, but that's also part of your network.
Yep. So my perspective, I would say, I think they were spot on a number of those things. I always joke that I think sanitation needs like our own PR department, because we do a lot of good things to support the business. Some of it is making sure that everybody's aware of the things that we're doing to support it. I would also say that, and I think this is a shortcoming with a lot of FSQ leadership, is that we have to understand that this is a business, right? If we're not profitable, now I'm not saying that we go and cut our nose to spite our face, sort of make stupid decisions short term, but we have to realize that if we're not profitable, our businesses are not profitable, our positions don't last very long, right? So we have to make sure that we're also contributing to the bottom line of the business. And from what I've seen, sanitation has got a lot of low-hanging fruit. We're typically the group that, and it's all the indirect support at a site, right? So it's the maintenance, it's the sanitation, it's quality, but those indirect departments that aren't actually putting product out the door are the first ones that are going to get cut whenever budgets need to get trimmed, right? And I've always argued that, and my background is in finance, so I don't think I have necessarily an advantage, but maybe of a slightly different perspective, in that the person that's setting those budgets typically is handed the numbers, right? And they're trying to massage the initiatives and projects that are coming down to make sure that we have a realistic opportunity to achieve them. And if a site is told, hey, you know what, we need to reduce and headcount by two headcounts in order to make budgets for next year, I don't think there's a person in leadership that would, if the sanitation leadership at that site came back and said, you know what, I appreciate you, we need to cut 2 people, that translates to this dollar amount, and here's my alternative to achieve that same productivity. I don't know of a site manager that would say, no, I want to cut the headcount, right? It's just that headcount happens to be the easy button, right? So I think my thing is making sure that we all understand that we do drain a lot of resources from sites, right? If you're not looking at CIP optimization right now, it's probably one of the biggest and lowest hanging fruit within all of our organizations. So just making sure that everybody, we do our part to making sure that the business is as productive as possible while remaining to be the sheriffs, right? To make sure that we don't catch ourselves in hot water.
Literally, my last hour right before this call was CIP optimization.
Yeah.
You're spot on. Yeah.
And I would assume using AI in some way, right? Because that's the other topic is how do you use AI to make everything more efficient?
So, no, it's not using AI, but just general knowledge from the years past. But now I do need to put AI to it now that you said it. But uh, but there's a lot that can be utilized with AI as long as you respect it.
Yeah.
So.
Um, so a number of people who registered indicated that they were either early career or looking for a transition into sanitation from wherever their current employment was. So to circle back on Neil's comment on networking, that is probably very important to those folks. You should connect with these people on LinkedIn. I dropped a LinkedIn group in the chat, relevant, and then those professional organizations are good too. For me, the networking piece has evolved over time because I was originally networked with a lot of microbiologists or FSQ folks, which is not the same as the Sanitarian network. So when you guys have seen people move, this is a question we got pre-submitted. When you have seen people move from FSQ into sanitation, what are the adjustments or the bumps along the way that you've seen for those people making that kind of a switch?
So I guess I'll take my turn first. So somebody moving from FSQ into sanitation. So first, I'll readily admit that's not a move that most people do willingly, right? So that is a move that usually that's where somebody's manager comes to them and tries to say, hey, I've got a great opportunity for you. And then tries to tell them all the great advantages and the insight that they're going to learn and how it's going to further their career. So usually, and it's one of the major hurdles that we have within sanitation, it's a stepping stone. It's not a permanent career path for most. But if I said that, I think the biggest, so most people that come into sanitation from FSQ, I think it's an eye-opening experience of appreciation. They don't, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that think that they're good at sanitation that can sit there and they've read a book or watched a webinar and think that they're good at it or could do it. But I remember again when I was in the plants, it was final cleanup on Friday night. I suited up and I went and worked with my crews for a good hour just to make sure that my level of empathy was adequate. Right. So I don't think unless you get a good dose of, running a Strawman hose or a steam injected cold pressure wand, unless you do that firsthand, I don't think you can really say that you're a sanitarian. I don't know, rambling a little bit, but I think the biggest thing is people get a dose of appreciation of how challenging the role can be.
I could not agree more with you, Nathan. That's exactly correct.
I love those words, by the way.
Because that's exactly correct. It's like people who transition to sanitation either by choice or by being told that they have to, or they just stumble upon that opportunity and they do it. They really develop a whole new appreciation for the profession and the end result. And like you, I have not mentioned this before, but during my career, I've also have been an owner of a quality commercial cleaning company, which we would go into the facilities and execute on cleaning. And even though I was the owner of the company, I was actually suiting up and executing those cleanings. So it just gives you a whole new understanding of the challenges, and allows you to develop the appreciation for the hard work, and how difficult it might be sometimes to accomplish the results that are desired. So then the support of the people that you work with is crucial. The support of the FSQA people that are not the sanitarian is crucial, because a lot of times they are the ones who can remove the roadblocks or provide additional resources, or maybe provide the capital to implement the CIP systems in the facilities.
Yeah, it's an interesting transition because I've done, like I said, ops, quality, and again, I really truly believe quality QFS is definitely a younger person's game, trying to deal with all those regulations, the changing regulations, all the audits, and all that kind of stuff. Um, Sanitation by no means is easy at all. I think we've stressed that enough here today, but the rewarding fact of it, I look at it as like let's go back to if you go into a restaurant, what are some of the first things people look at to judge a restaurant? And the first thing is the restroom. So I even look at, walk into one of our facilities and I walk into the restrooms, the employee restrooms, and their changing rooms, and how are we maintaining that facility? Because that's where I look at what's the level of respect for the facility. And so if we put that emphasis on there, we're going to make a lot of other people's jobs that much nicer if they see that we're putting out a nice facility. And again, a lot of the stuff that we do, I look at it more holistically as I've probably saved somebody's life throughout my career because of some work that I've done. And others on the team have saved somebody's life. So there's a lot more to it than just cleaning a facility. It's literal food safety at the ground level. And the joy of doing that and thinking that, have I potentially saved somebody's life? Probability is probably pretty high throughout my career, in all of our careers, in this. So that to me is the driving factor. I don't like pushing papers like QFS. I like the boots on the ground. If you don't like sitting at a desk, this is definitely the position to be in.
It's funny, Neil, is I just last week was telling a site about the bathroom, right? All the general hygiene areas and how there was an opportunity for that. So ironic because it's very true. But one thing I was going to come back to is Abby had also asked about the networking and the importance of it in this role. And I would say that's one thing that as sanitarians we're horribly poor at. But in addition to that, we don't make the argument to our leadership, to our managers, that we need to go to whatever conference, event, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of, and you don't have to go. This is one of my things. You don't have to go to the national IFP convention, right? Almost every state has an affiliate, has a chapter for IFP. Get involved with it. I mean, you're talking about some mileage in your car and maybe a night in a hotel for their annual conference, which can open. I mean, that's just the kind of the way to open a lot of doors for on the networking side. So I'd really highly recommend that people look at things like that.
Something I think Neil, you told me that you had when you negotiated this position, it's in your contract that you get to go to IFP every year, and under, no circumstances can they say travel funding has been cut. And I thought that was such a good idea that I'm now going to tell grad students that they should maybe put that in their contract for the future.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Because again, if I look at my career, where have I made those contacts at? and it's funny because I go back to my plants and I work with the individuals in the plants and all that. I'm like, let me be the nerd so you can do your job well. And I have no problem being that nerd for you. And so but that's where these meetings are so important. Like Nathan mentioned, you don't even have to go to the international meeting because Aneta, you mentioned this. Our days, we get dragged down. It's bogged down. We get so narrow-sighted because we're so focused, laser focused on situations, and it's draining. It's like it's constantly draining. And anytime you can break away and go to a conference, it's amazing how much energy you can come back with. Even I went to a hygienic design training workshop. Um, how often do you get to sit around and nerd out for 2.5 days just talking about hygienic design? And for me, that was fun and energizing and coming back to the company with ideas and stuff like that. Um, and more networking, more people to contact in the future if I have questions. So it's highly important to do that. And if you don't do that, you're going to get stuck in a rut and it's not going to be fun.
We had a question come through as a direct message to me in the chat. So it's someone who is currently working at a dairy processor as a process engineer. They want to pursue grad school and they're interested specifically in engineering and interested in thinking about like engineering applications and sanitation. So I'm going to direct that part maybe to you guys to talk about how engineering skills are allied there. They also have some questions about like the nuts and bolts of grad school that I'll just take. So a question about research funding and if you can also work while you study. So depending on, this is grad school advice. So depending on your program, when you get the offer, it will potentially come with funding or not. Cornell funds grad students. But you may get an unfunded offer depending on what program you apply to. Similarly, it's a little program specific on if you can work or how much you can work and what that would look like at different schools and in different program areas. So maybe there's a portion of time where you need to be fully working on your degree versus part-time. So there's a lot of different ways to skin it, and it also depends on where you're going and which degree program you're in. But over to you guys for are there engineering skills used in sanitation?
Every day. Every day. And it's something I've been talking about a lot lately and was just in that last call talking about CIP optimization. Look at how much physics and engineering is put into a CIP system, so a clean in place system. Imagine, so if you're not from food manufacturing, imagine walking into a dairy plant. And I'm originally a dairy guy, so I love dairy. Once you're in dairy, you can't get out of it. It's in your blood. But you walk into the plant, and like Nathan said, you got all these cookies going down the line. You have miles and miles and miles of pipe, and you don't take them apart. You have to clean them in place. What's the physics to do that? I mean, we have to look at what kind of flow rates go through there. How is the equipment designed? What type of angles do we bend the piping and all that stuff so we could get it to clean right? You have to reach greater than 4,000 Reynolds to get turbid flow so you can actually clean. And that's actually one of the things I'm stressing right now on the dry sanitation side as we're looking at the low moisture guidance and flushing of products and all that. Is flushing going to be capable at some point? Probably so. But as they were in the 60s, 70s, and 80s of figuring out the physics, the engineering, the hygienic design of that equipment so they could get it to clean in place with using water and chemistry running through the lines, we're in that same stage right now for dry sanitation of trying to understand what are the physics behind the flow of if we're going to do a flush. What is the design of the bends, the proper bend, to bend a pipe? What are the proper hygienic design of the equipment so we can do it? So I think engineering right now, I love physics, if you can't tell, but it is going to be absolutely critical to our industry that we have individuals coming out with that knowledge if we're going to become successful in dry sanitation.
Yeah, and this whole aspect of hygienic design, right? most of the facilities in the United States, and actually not only United States, around the world, they have legacy equipment, right? And the legacy equipment presents the challenges that we exactly need the engineering people to try to help us resolve those issues, because it's not like we can just rip out the old equipment out of the facilities and replace them with new equipment. It would be ideal, but it's not practical. So those engineering design and retrofitting designs would be very beneficial for the any company. And then also when the companies are bringing new equipment, making sure that they are designed with the hygienic design in mind. So how are we going to clean this? Because lots of times the engineers without that type of knowledge, they will just install the equipment to make it functional and productive and efficient. But how do you clean it? Step back and try to put yourself in a sanitarian shoes. How are you going to clean this equipment? Is it accessible from all sides? Is there enough clearance on the bottom, from the top, from the bottom, from the sides? So I think that's a perfect opportunity for somebody to get involved and then create for themselves a great career, get involved with EHED 3A, learn about these standards and kind of build their knowledge base for that.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that's worked in FSQ, including sanitation, that has an engineering background that hasn't been successful. I mean, you're at such an advantage over most of us. I mean, I wish I was a better engineer, but luckily I can phone a friend. So I would definitely encourage somebody if they're passionate about, and that's probably key to all of it, right? It's the passion. If something interests you, just go after it, and there's plenty of opportunities.
Another question we had pre-submitted was, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges in sanitation generally right now? And you guys, talked about CIP optimization and staff turnover. What else would be on your list?
Hmm. Can I phone a friend? No, let's see, the most challenging aspects of sanitation right now, that was kind of the question, Abby. Jeez. I mean, I don't think it's anything new. I think it's more of just the same. It's the staffing, it's the the productivity opportunities, it's the turnover. It seems like every food manufacturing site has an Amazon warehouse popping up within 5 miles of it. That much better working conditions and better pay. So it's a bad combination for most food manufacturing sites. Um, I mean, there's underinvestment. I mean, we've got aging facilities that it's so ironic that as you go through a site in North America or in the US, and then if you visited the same operation in Asia Pacific, just how starkly different those operations will be. And it just comes back to the expectations. I mean, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but our plants are not nearly as nice as all the plants in Asia. And it's some of it's just the age of when they were built, but the cost of, of doing anything to maintain those sites is also a lot lower. So there's just a laundry list of challenges. I'm not sure I can pin it down to one.
I would say, yeah, this is not an easy question, because one of the biggest problems I'm constantly dealing with is trying to make a sanitarian's job easier. Because the harder we make it for them, the less potential for success. And it's really working with the suppliers, the tool manufacturers, the chemical suppliers. How can we do this easier? Especially when you get into dry sanitation versus wet sanitation. I mean, they're two starkly different types of sanitation. And in dry, you're working with ergonomics and you're asking people to contort to different bodily positions to clean, where in a wet sanitation, you're hitting it with a hose, a foamer, or a scrub brush on a long end. So I'd say right now, especially with the push to go dry in the industry or reduce water, we're going to continue to struggle, but it takes individuals like ourselves to keep pushing our vendors, bringing our vendors in, having them there during a cleaning event, so they can see what are the true struggles that we're dealing with. We're always going to deal with turnover. That's just inherent. Um, but what can we do to make their jobs easier so that way they're potentially more successful at it? And then we might have the potential to actually keep one person a little longer.
Anita, do you want to add any to the list of challenges?
Well, I think they cover pretty much all the challenges that I mean I can think of. I mean, I think that the one thing that I would add is probably the rising cost of everything around us. Um, I mean, that does not make easier for us then to turn around and give our employees a decent pay because, like Nathan said, we are in the business of trying to make a profit. So it's kind of it's the balancing act, right? So in addition to everything that was already said, now you got to also remember that at the end of the day, the bottom line has to be in green.
And so we have one more question come through via chat, and I'll kind of make this the last one. It kind of follows on Neil's point about vendors and new technologies. Um, what has been, as a corporate sanitarian, what has been kind of your approach to introducing new interventions into sanitation? There's new technologies that come online, but in terms of adoption and use and actual practical application, how do you decide whether you're going to try one of these new ones and how effective do you see them end up being compared to maybe traditional methods?
Go ahead, Neil.
Well, I love new technology. I'm a big proponent, and I'm trying anything and everything I can, including robots. But it's interesting. Like when we started working with robot technology, EHS wanted to get involved because they're autonomous, right? And it comes down to a human safety standpoint too. So I don't know. There's a lot of. I think we're done with chemistry. I don't think there's going to be a lot of new advances on the chemistry side. Any new mass, especially like with sanitizers and stuff like that, the mass majority of sanitizers that come out now are just a reblending of current chemistries. It's nothing real new out there from that standpoint. I mean, there's a couple here and there. And cleaning chemistry itself, I don't think there's anything real major. But I think the next big thing is like the robot cleaning. You see Rosie out there. You see these autonomous floor scrubbers. Um, Potential for laser cleaning, using all these different things that are potential. Um, and that's the fun part because is it going to work or not? Testing it out and stuff like that. So it does add it makes the job a little bit more fun from that perspective. But I think we're going to see a lot more outside of chemistry and all that to support us.
Anita, I don't know if you want to go in the middle because I feel like Nathan is like Neil and Nathan represent the bookends for the answers to this question.
Well,
That's
yeah,
true.
I love new technologies as well, and like sometimes when you go to these shows like the IFP, like we went, there was a couple of interesting technologies that I saw, and it's just a matter of what is the best application for them, right? Because something that you might see on the showroom floor might not exactly be the best fit. So I think it's just a trial and error, something that is the best fit for the situation that you're dealing with. And sometimes the opportunities present themselves, some new challenge arises, and then you just bring those new technologies to kind of try it out and see if this is something that can be more widely used in more than one facility. So but I agree with Neil, like as far as the chemistry, there are just reblending, and a lot of times you will have a situation where, you know, due to cost savings, they might be, reducing a chlorine amount in a chemical or something like that. So that doesn't necessarily make the chemistry different. It's just make it, any very different, but it's just a little bit different from the point of view of the chemical composition. So.
Yeah, so Abby knows I'm kind of vocal on this, but I mean, I don't want to be like I'm all for advances, new technologies, but my kind of we have to make sure that we get the basic blocking and tackling done right first. And a lot of the places that I go, they're looking for the next miracle in a barrel, or they're looking for, you know, and maybe we'll get there, like Neil said, the next robot that will actually do everything for us so that we can just sit in our offices and let, Rosie do her thing. But uh, I'm more of let's get the basics done right. Let's make sure that the money we do have to invest um, is spent going after what's going to have the biggest bang. There's something sexy and fun about going after new technologies. And we're looking at several of them, right? There are definitely some new technologies that are very appealing, but uh, I am not sold on the practicality and the usefulness of, um, the next pair of cool sunglasses that I can see bacteria with. We just need to. I I've seen so many horrible practices in my career that we just need to get. I say this all the time. We need to get visibly clean consistently, and we will be amazed how much reduction in risk we will achieve. But as an industry, that's that's a high bar for us. It's unfortunate,
Yeah.
but it's a challenge.
Yeah, I had a mentor of mine of many years before he passed away. He said, Neil, you're going to spend your career just dealing with 95% on the basics.
Yeah,
95% of the time, it's the basics that are your problem. It's the 5% that's going to be the fun part. So it's very true to what you state.
Um, I think Nathan made a LinkedIn post calling himself the John Dutton of sanitation on this topic recently. So another plug for LinkedIn. I kind of knew what their answers were going to be to this topic because I just see what they post on there ahead of time. So I want to thank the panelists again for joining us today, and for you guys for spending your time. I know we ran a bit over, but I appreciate it. So feel free to join us next time for virtual office hours. Thanks again.